everyone. Welcome back to Insights from the Couch. Today we're talking about what makes a good mother. This is a big topic with a lot of emotional controversial opinions, no doubt. And Laura and I have really kept our own perspectives close to the vest. So you're going to be hearing this conversation unfold very authentically and genuinely in real time today. We want to hear from you too, particularly about this. Email us at info@insightsfromthecouch, message us on Instagram, and let us know what you think about motherhood and what makes a good mother. All right, let's get into it. I can't even wait.
Yes, I love this topic. I mean, particularly because I think I certainly filter a lot of my experience through this question of like, if I do X, am I being a good mother? When I make this decision, am I being a good mother? And I hear clients talking that way all the time. Like they're asking themselves constantly, am I being a good mother?
You're asking yourself that constantly?
I mean, I think I filter a lot of my choices through that. Like not that particular question, but like, how does this choice impact my ability to be a mother? Okay. And is it negatively impacting it or positively impacting it? So it's definitely a counterpoint that I'm bouncing off a lot. And I care. I think we all care about being great moms.
Unless we're a virulent narcissist or sociopath. Yes.
I think even they want to be considered a great mother.
Considered is different than being one. So I have to, on that point, I have to jump in as we get into this topic and just say, I am reading. Do you know who Ruby Franke is? The mommy blogger that's going to jail.
Yes, I saw her daughter do an interview.
Okay, well, I want to hear about that because her name's Sherry. And I think it's Frank. I don't know if it's Frank or Frankie. It's Franke. I was not really familiar with this story, but her daughter, Sherry, the eldest daughter of, I think, 6 kids, has written a memoir of her experience. I'm halfway through it. So the timing of this episode is so interesting because Ruby Franke is the antithesis of a good mother. First of all, she is clearly extremely mentally ill, this woman, and either a narcissist, a sociopath, both. I don't even care about being delicate about not diagnosing somebody I've never met. She's just an abhorrent person. She abuses her kids. And, I don't want to give spoilers to anyone who might be interested in reading the book. It's so well written. It's less about the details of the abuse, at least so far, and more about the inner landscape of this woman, Sherry, and what she went through having this mother who was so withholding and judgmental and all about image long before they had this video blog. So let me just give a couple details to frame this. Basically, they're strict Mormons in Utah. They live near Provo, Utah. And the parents met in college. Both of the parents were strict Mormons. They met in college. They got married a couple weeks later. Ruby, the mother, had a couple kids by the time she was 21 years old. Ugh. And she started by getting her daughter up every morning at age 5, every morning at 6 a.m. and making her sit in front of the piano and play and have a smile on her face. If she didn't have the right expression, she'd be smacked across the face. Okay, so that just gives you a little flavor for the kind of environment. And there's this one moment where Sherry, the daughter, says she's writing in her journal and she's trying to come to terms with, how do I know what I have to do to survive this environment, which is to say nothing, do what makes my mother happy, right? And so many of our clients have lesser versions of this dynamic that we hear about in therapy, or the same kind of version. But then reconciling, this doesn't feel right. And one day she's writing in her journal and she says, I realize I don't think my mother loves me. Ugh. Yeah. At about 11 years old. And so
she's writing that at 11. She has that realization.
Yeah. And, she was right. In this case, this woman, it doesn't sound like this woman is capable of love, but yet she built her career and they built riches off of being a mommy blogger. And they called it passenger eight or eight passenger, I think, meaning the 2 parents and the 6 kids. And this woman, Ruby, built an image of this beautiful, perfect life, raising her children Mormon, doing everything just right, being a real mom. And it was all performative and all bullshit while she was abusing the kids. And at some point, she got involved with a licensed therapist named
That's
Jody
so
Hildebrand.
creepy.
Yeah.
Were they like romantically involved or like what was the story there?
I think there might be something like that, but I haven't gotten to that part yet. But Jody operated out of sort of a cult mindset and really brainwashed clients and started to take control of the decisions Ruby and her husband made with their kids. And so all these punishments would be very psychologically manipulative and withholding, like you don't get food unless you behave the right way. Some of the kids were starving. So it got really extreme. It's a fascinating story, but it brings to mind this as we're contemplating what makes a good mother. Some people really don't have a good mother. So how do we then learn how to be as moms?
I don't know. It's like a tough question.
I mean, do you model your mothering after your mother or what you didn't like about your mother or what where do you draw from society?
Both and, right? Both and. I mean, I just feel like I've always had like strong instincts around this stuff.
Agreed.
There's things my mother did really well that I thought like I'm taking this part with me.
Yeah.
And there are things she didn't do so well that I thought I'm never taking this part with me.
Yeah, I think I feel that way too.
Yeah. And I'm pretty like good at discerning that in my own gut. But I don't think everybody is. I mean, I know people aren't.
I do hear a lot of people say like, oh, does that make me a bad mom?
Bad mom.
I don't have that because I don't think I tend to be that litmusy according to society in general. I think I operate out of my own instincts. And I feel like a part I got right is the attachment piece in terms of being responsive, nurturing, supportive, there for you kind of responses. However, with an older perspective, I realized that like at certain times, particularly going through my divorce, there was a period that I was very distracted and stressed and I wasn't as present as I should have been. And I've had to talk that through with my kids. Like their memory of that time was not great. So I've tried to take accountability for that, but also give myself grace around, I did the best I could at the time. You know what? I didn't do the best I could. I did, looking back, I wish I had done some of that differently, but I didn't know what I didn't know at that time.
Yeah. Those phases like really tax you too. I mean, like it's hard to have. I think there's like a whole bunch of different ways, different types of moms. Like there's so many, like I was not the logistical mom. Like I was the mom where like we'd go for like a beach trip and my friends would show up with like coolers and like changes of clothes and 5 different bottles of sunscreen and I'd like roll up with like a bottle of sunscreen in my purse and I was like clearly like didn't understand the assignment. Like
Me too.
I was like
Gives
a little haphazard and stuff like that. I think, oh shit, I didn't like pack any food and so I think there's all different types of like being a good mom, but the core traits, the beating heart of what is really a good mom comes down to that attachment piece that you're talking about. Like it doesn't matter what you're about, but if you have a couple of those core pieces, I think you really, and I wrote them down because I was like, when I was thinking about this, I was like, what do I really think if you pulled everything away is like the good mom? And I think it's for me.
And then I'll tell you mine. Yeah, I want to hear.
So the first one I have is knowing where where you end as a mom and the child begins. And and not like reversing that frame at all, like where it's like you think your child is an extension of you, or your
Ugh.
child needs to take care of your needs. Like you have a real firm idea of like, this is me, this is what I'm responsible for, and they're their own unique being.
So important. So important. Don't we see that so much in therapy where people are trying
Yes.
to live vicariously through their children, controlling their children?
Yes. Yes. Or just like blended with their children and they don't even
Yeah.
want to be. But like I've been there in moments, but you got to pull yourself out of that.
Right.
And
Well, we can all get blended in moments, but I'm talking about people because I think this goes hand in hand where they really, their ego is invested in their child's accomplishments. It's not really about the good of the child. It's really about how this reflects on me and what it
yes.
says about me. And they attempt to hyper control their children's choices. Sometimes that comes from anxiety, but sometimes it comes from an ego-based need to be in control and to see that person as, instead of a separate person, as a reflection of them.
Yeah, and that's that version, but also the child's there to care for the parents' needs.
Oof.
That version's really gross too.
I agree.
You know, like the guilt piece where you're guilting your kid. The child is there to make sure that you feel a certain way. That's a way to
Manage the
really,
parents' emotions.
yeah,
And what I see in therapy, and I know you do too, is women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s who, because of that childhood dynamic, even if they intellectually see it for what it is now, they really still struggle to unblend and unhook from the guilt, right? Like I
yeah,
have a client whose mother, the phone calls with her are so absurd. The mother's always in a tizzy. She wants to run all of her emotions on, it's like a drama triangle
yeah,
where the mother is the victim and she's an angry victim and she expects her daughter to like make her feel better, be a constant, unequivocally available sounding board for all of this mother's problems and needs, and really doesn't have any respect that this daughter might have her own life, her own fluctuating emotional bandwidth, nothing.
Oh, I see that too.
Right?
And I think that so in the inverse, the people who get this right and understand that like I'm responsible for myself and my child is their own person and they're not responsible for me. That to me is like step one
Yep.
of like
Yep.
good mother. So I
Baseline.
have
Baseline.
baseline. So I have two others that I think are core. I
Tell me.
bet if I thought about it longer, I'd probably think of more. I think that there's like, and you've spoken about this, is like when your parent has genuine enthusiasm and curiosity for the person that you are and the way you see the world. Like, you said to me before, like, oh, my dad will give me critical feedback, but I know he thinks I'm the best thing since sliced bread.
Yep.
Right. And it's like when you
I
have
do.
that knowing that your parent really sees you and really values the way you see the world. And it's just like a felt sense of
Yep.
like they get me, they're paying attention, they're curious about me, and they're just so fucking glad to see me.
Yeah. And they support you. Like, you know,
Yeah.
that you're back.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
that's
think that's great.
two.
Yeah.
And then three, I think is like when you're a real like good, sturdy, predictable leader and like you don't rely on like authoritarian crap, like using harshness, shame, or criticism as like tools for learning. Like
Amen.
you're really using kindness and warmth to lead.
I agree completely. And I think that, it is a parent's responsibility to teach children how to be in the world and to have some structure and discipline. And that admittedly is not my strong suit. It was a problem for me to be divorced because I'm a very laissez-faire parent. I'm a very laissez-faire human. I didn't have a very structured or disciplined upbringing. In fact, I don't know that I really had any structure at all to my childhood. And that worked great for me. But as a result, as a mom, since I had my kids at a young age and I got divorced at a young age. I don't think I did a great job with the discipline part, and I didn't have another person there to provide that. However, where I'm going with all of this is that you can discipline and give structure from a place of kindness, love, encouragement, teaching.
Yep.
There's no space for harshness, exacting. I don't believe in corporal punishment, and I have to sit here often and listen to clients describe it, and many of them are fans of it, and I respect that that's their view, but I don't respect
I don't think
or
it
endorse that
works.
choice.
I don't think it
either.
works. My mom is a big fan of like pulling control. Like, I mean, we had an incident when she was down where my son, he is like a new driver. He's been driving for probably a year, and he is doing a big project, and he took a friend and drove to Jacksonville to go do an interview. And like, I was like, I did not feel comfortable with him driving to Jacksonville with like this kid in his car. It just like didn't feel right to me. But he did it anyway. He did it anyway. Even though I was like, take an Uber, I'll pay for the Uber. Like, I
Right.
really don't want you driving. So my mom was here for that incident. He comes home, he gets home safely. And she's like, well, what are you going to do when he gets home? I said, I'm going to really talk to him about like the choice he made because I didn't think it was like a safe, responsible choice. She's like, well, are you going to say, hey, buddy, hand me the keys? Like she
Damn.
wanted me to like take control and like one up him and put him in his
Yep.
place.
Yep.
And I said, Mom, I don't think it works. Like I don't parent like that. And I don't really think it works. And those were
don't
her
either.
instincts,
Yeah.
especially with my brother to go head to head with him all the time. And it really like they don't have a relationship. And I think it's because that instinct is bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree completely. And I want to talk about some of the things that to add on to yours, because I agree with all of yours. And
Yeah, I want to hear yours.
But this story that you're telling makes me think of also another concept that I think is important, which is they talk about the right fit, right? And I do emotionally focused couples therapy. And so couples come to me together for the first intake session, and then they each come in individually. And I do more of an attachment history questionnaire, my own version of the adult attachment interview, which is an assessment. And it's a lot about what was your childhood like. It's not about blaming parents or hyper focusing on the past. It's more about understanding, what did you learn about how to connect? Were there people in your life who were there for you? Did you learn to go to somebody as a source of comfort, or was there no predictable, reliable, consistent adult available? And so you had to learn to survive by relying on yourself, tuning out and dissociating, whatever it may be, not to mention abuse, right? And we know that benign neglect, even in childhood, has a powerful effect, and that emotional neglect in childhood can be even more painful and damaging than physical abuse. I'm not trying to minimize either. They're both horrible. But there is this idea of like the right fit when you learn to do therapy from an attachment perspective. I am a very imaginative, emotionally sensitive, quirky little MFer. Okay. I have stuff going on in my head, particulars. I'm sensitive to my environment. Like I was like this as a young child. No one else in my family is like this. If my parents listen to this episode, they will be laughing right now because I just had all these little quirks. Like I made up that I had 7 sisters, and I carried it really far. I would pretend they were in the house when friends came over. I would make my parents lie. So many different things. I woke up every night and went into my parents' room. There were elaborate rituals. So I really believe if I had the kind of stern parent who spanked, or I can't even imagine how my psyche would be. Like I wouldn't have been able to handle that, even if it was responsibly rendered. I know my husband wasn't like beaten or anything, but he was given the belt a couple times. And then he's like, you didn't have to get the belt off him because the fact that you knew the belt could happen.
Kept you in line.
Right. But for me, I'd be in a therapist's office for 20 years trying to like do EMDR to process that trauma. So there is something about, you might have a parent that's like great for another kid, but isn't a good fit for you. And that's a big part of being a mother too. Are you a great match for the disposition of your child?
Yeah. And I completely agree with that. And there are some, and I have 3 different kids and I feel like I'm probably a better fit for some of them than others. But
Me
then
too.
I also think that it's beholden on the parent to figure out the kid they have and parent the kid they have.
Totally agree.
Rather than the kid that they like hope to have. Can you get curious and get to the level of the kid that you actually
and be
have?
flexible.
And be flexible and adaptable.
Exactly. So I think that's got to be on the list, being flexible and adaptable to the needs of your specific child, right? Are they on the autism spectrum? Are they really creative and sensitive? Are they sort of, independent? Do they not want to be touched, right? One of my kids, I'm very affectionate and I want to like hug my kids every 5 seconds. I have a kid who does not want to be touched ever. And that may sound like a small thing.
No, I have one of those too. And then I have one kid who the only way I can connect with him is by sitting and tickling him. And that's the only time he talks.
Yeah.
And then the other kid doesn't want to be touched, but like talks all the time.
Yeah.
But like, you got to know those, idiosyncratic things and respect them.
Exactly. And try to, because I do believe also, as we get into my little list, this wasn't on it, but I think this is important to me. A parent-child relationship is always top down forever, even when your child is an adult.
I love this part.
Yes, it is your job as a parent to think of it. Doesn't mean you're never going to fuck up. I'm not saying that, because God knows I've fucked up plenty of times, but I've created a relationship with my daughters that is secure. I believe they know they're loved and they feel comfortable telling me stuff about their life. And they feel comfortable telling me when I've hurt them or done something they don't like.
Yep.
And it is my job as a parent, whether they're 25, 45, or 15, in my opinion, not to let them disrespect me, but to listen to their emotional experience, how I have impacted them. Doesn't matter what my intentions are. It's not my ego that's on the line and my idea of myself. It's my job to say, tell me more about what you experienced. I hear you. I get it. I thank you for helping me understand what it's like in your shoes when I did that. I'm so sorry that I hurt you. What can we learn from this? How can I do better? How can I be there for you? There are things I have heard from my children about their experience through my divorce that, in my opinion, I'm just going to say this, I'm not invalidating it. They don't listen to my podcast, and I've said this to them anyway. But that I don't really, that feels so far-fetched to me and feel almost like what they've been conditioned to believe. I could be wrong, but that's not what I tell them. What I tell them is, that was your experience. I hear you. I'm sorry that even if I was working 3 jobs, which is what was going on at one period of time, right? That they felt that I wasn't as present as I could have been. So I always think it's a parent's job to remember you're the parent, and I'm here to provide unconditional love and support. Because if you don't get that from a mother, who in the fuck are you getting it from?
Yeah. And I love that you said it just like that, because I think a lot of people feel like I'm the parent and I deserve respect. And that's the frame that a lot of people go in with. Like, I deserve respect. I don't want to hear anything about myself that doesn't jive with who I think I am. And that's the frame they hold. But that's it. That's the one. And that goes back to being properly individuated.
Exactly.
And holding the structure.
And individuation for our listeners is when you have a strong sense of self as autonomous. Doesn't mean you're not connected to other people, but you know where you end and they begin.
Yep.
You don't put your shit on other people. You don't expect people to rescue you, enable you, manage your emotions. You don't sit in a victim stance. You take an empowered stance where you know life and your choices are your responsibility.
Yeah. A lot of mothers drop the ball right here.
Totally.
Yeah.
One thing I feel like I've done well is that, like, I don't put any of my stuff on my kids. I mean, I hope they'd agree with that. I think they would, but I'm not living vicariously through them. And I don't feel like my parents did that to me. So that's something positive I've taken from my childhood.
Yeah.
But I want to say a couple more. This goes along the lines of this, that two things, and then I want to give a shout out to Sue Johnson. So first of all, I think that acceptance, and we're talking about this through all of this, but I think acceptance is one of the biggest prerequisites, not to mention gifts you can give your child, that you fundamentally accept them for who they are. And let's be honest, we all have some ego. We all have some desires. Some of it is even just, I want certain things for my kids because I don't want them to suffer.
Yes.
It's not about my ego. I want them to have a good life, but you have to let your kids be who they are. And really making a child feel accepted for their personality, their clothing choices, their life decisions. And this goes along with letting them make mistakes. So this is my second, is not letting children, yes, you have to parent, but I also think you have to let children have some natural consequences. And this is what's getting lost in the era of lawnmower and helicopter parenting, is that over enabling kids, doing everything for them. I mean, parents writing college applications, parents obsessing over where their kids go to school, parents trying to prevent their children from making mistakes. It's not good parenting.
Yeah, but that goes right back to not knowing where you end and they begin. Like It's the intolerance in the parent's body of like not being able to let that kid fail, because then that feels like a failure for them.
Right. So, and I think it comes from three things, right? I think it comes from that. I think sometimes it comes from like ego and wanting certain things that reflect well on you. And I think sometimes it comes from just fear that like my kids aren't going to be okay in the world if I don't hypermanage.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Definitely. I agree.
Yeah. So to me, those are really, really important things. And where I feel like I've grown as a person is that I didn't realize how, I'm not a structured person. My childhood was my parents were separated for a long time, eventually divorced. I floated back from one house to the other. I did very well like that. It didn't bother me at all to have two houses. It didn't bother me to have my parents separated. In fact, I preferred it. What bothered me was fighting. When that happened, it bothered me. So to me, my parents separated and feeling happier in their lives, I thought that was fine. I like to kind of float around. My children didn't have the same experience. Like they've shared with me that it was really hard on them to have to like pack their stuff and go from house to house. And it sounds crazy now as years into being a therapist and working with relationships that I was so surprised by that. I didn't anticipate it because I didn't experience it.
Right.
So I also think part of being a good parent is openness to learn as you go and be constantly evaluating and taking an inventory. We all have blind spots. You have your personality, you had your experience, you don't know what you don't know, but being willing to say, oh, you know what? I didn't know that, right? Sounds crazy that I might not know that my kids didn't love going back. I mean, I don't know that I thought they loved it, but it was not hard on me.
Them. Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't impact them the same way it impacted me, but being willing to say, okay, I didn't know that. It doesn't make me a bad mom, but like, what could I do to make this better for them and be more understanding and responsive?
Yeah, no, I agree. like I even have blind spot. Well, we all have blind spots, but one of mine is when I'm thinking or I'm worried or I'm just, in my head, I'm in my head a lot. Like I'm in my head a lot. That's just part of me. And I can get quiet and sort of just not ruminate, but I'm sorting in my head like what I want to do. And that impacts my kids. Like they've given me the feedback of like, and when I can see them checking in
Mm,
on me like in a worried way, I'm like,
wow.
whoa, like I don't want them to be doing that. So I really try to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
right up front with like what's going on with me because I
Yeah.
don't want them to all of a sudden feel like they need to take care of me or wonder if something's wrong.
Me
But
too.
but I'm oblivious to when I get into that state. I can't see it very well, but I can see it reflected in them. So I switch gears pretty quickly because I don't
Yeah.
want them to feel like they need to take care of me.
No, I think this goes back to what we're saying, right? It's a parent top down thing. I don't
Yeah.
want that either. And it's beautiful that your kids will tell you that and then you course correct. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's being a good mom. It's not making mistakes. You're not even making a mistake. You're just being you, but it's being willing and available to assess yourself and take feedback and say, "Oh, I just like to be up in my head, but it's impacting these relationships that are
Yeah.
important to me. So let me course correct."
Exactly.
That's
And
all.
I actually asked my kids, what do you think makes a good mom? Because I was like, we're doing this episode. Do you want to hear
Yeah.
what my kids had to say?
Yes.
Well, my son had different feedback than my daughter. First thing he said was safety, someone to go
Mm,
to. There's
yeah.
your attachment frame,
That's the
right?
Sue Johnson stuff. Yep.
Ugh, that was his first instinct.
I love that.
Then the second, this is such a boy, right? He said food security. Like basically just keep feeding me and we'll be
Right.
good.
Right. It's the child version of feed me, fuck me, flatter me. We talked about like men want from their wives.
This is like, I think my son would be like forever just grateful if I just was like in the kitchen making
Right. If
like a
you're
big
emotionally available and feeding him.
yep.
Yes. I mean,
And then
that could be the like caption for a good mom right there.
totally just keep feeding me. And then then he like laughed and he's like goods and services. Like he loves it. Like when I make his bed, he's an active service guy. So like if I'm just like literally barefoot in the kitchen and cleaning, he's like just happy. And he said like nesting, like that we have like a safe nest. So I thought
Mm,
that was like beautiful.
I love that.
And then he said these two things. He said a model. He's like, like somebody who models like a good way to
Good
be.
stuff.
And then he said a mom that feels good about herself.
Ooh, I love that.
I thought that was really, this is a 16-year-old.
It's amazing.
Good observations. And then my daughter said that she thought that the like real core was stability and predictability
Mm.
and modeling emotional and physical health. And she said, not a mom who puts herself first in a selfish way, but a mom who prioritizes her needs.
I love it. It sounds like you're raising really emotionally intelligent, healthy children. Those are beautiful.
I thought those were beautiful.
They are beautiful. I wish I asked my daughters. I don't know what they would say, but I do know I've gotten feedback from them that they feel like I'm always there for them, that they can tell me anything. I know when there's like a scared moment or they're sad or hurting, I'm the first person they come to. They have their friends call me. They'll call me on speaker I mean, I know part of it maybe is because I'm a therapist, but I also think it's been that way forever. And I know they don't worry about me in that way. Like a child should be free to focus on their own life. Obviously, if I had a medical situation or something was wrong, they would care and
Yeah.
be supportive, but it's not their job to go, "Oh my God, mom, are you okay?" Or, it's just to your point. You want to be responsive to your kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like the Sue Johnson stuff. So I'm glad you brought up emotional safety because that's another baseline given. Feeling emotional safety with anyone, I mean, is a prerequisite, I think, in relationship. But if it's not there with a mother and child, it's a really, really hard thing to overcome. You shouldn't have to watch your words, worry if you make a mistake, be thinking about how your mother's evaluating you, worry about performing or earning love. This is a
Ugh.
big thing I see in therapy. People who feel like they have to achieve, meet standards to be loved. There is nothing more. And I think studies show this, that when you have, this is the Sue Johnson heart of it, I was going to say, a parent, she talks about it in the sense of relationships. And, you know, her work is based on the pioneering work of Dr. John Bowlby.
Yep.
Back in the 40s, who first identified that when infants are crying, right, they need an adult to respond to them. It's based on what she calls ARE, being accessible, responsive, and engaged. And in fact, mothers don't have to, there's a concept called the good enough mother.
Yep.
And that means that a mother doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to respond to every bid for connection. In fact, that's impossible. But mothers who are responsive most of the time, they're accessible, meaning I'm here if you need me. Oops, I wasn't there. I repair with you, and now I'm here, right? They create a secure base, which is a lot of what your son's talking about. And the concept of a secure base means you, my mom, are a place. It's like home, you know, station in space, right? Like you go, you check in, you get fed, you're heard, you're loved, you're accepted. And that gives you the confidence and security to go out and explore the world, develop yourself and individuate. And that responsiveness is when I look at you with tears in my eyes. Do you mirror back to me that you're with me in that experience? You don't even have to feel empathy. You just have to be willing to be there, be responsive to that emotion, and be engaged, right? Be present most of the time, some of the time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Not perfect.
No mother is going to be perfect. But I mean, and this is like, as we're like unpacking all of this, it occurs to me that like, it's simple, but there's a lot to it in a way. And mothers are so critical for helping children figure out what love is like and what their self-worth is like.
Yeah.
And when this goes wrong, it can be very hard to put it back together. This is why people are in lifetimes of therapy, trying to feel like they have to earn love or do something in order to be loved, because they never felt intrinsically loved or seen.
Right. And people absolutely can and do triumph, but it's a big wound.
It's a
and
big
so
wound.
I think what I'm trying to impart right now is that, you know, something I think my mom did really well, was letting me be me. You know, like she didn't let me have long hair when I was 3, but I then insisted on wearing pink ballet tights on my head so that they could be a long hair, because she wouldn't let me have long hair. And
That's hysterical.
Yeah. And I wore it everywhere I went, proudly in the grocery store with this. And then my aunt made me a wool hat with long brown braids. And I wore the hat in the summertime, like
That's
with
adorable.
a bathing suit at the pool, because I wanted long hair. So, you know, I was allowed to have my feisty, independent spirit. You know, and I think along with that, and I always felt loved. I always felt unconditionally loved, and I was always fed, and taken care of and nurtured in those ways. But I really think for our listeners, the most important thing, the heart of everything we're talking about, is really being a safe, accepting, emotionally engaged, soft place for your children to land. In the long run, that is going to give them such a leg up in life. There's actually plenty of room to make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, if you get that part. And I think this is where the part where I think a lot of parents screw up a little bit is that there's so many accoutrements in our culture for kids, right? Like, so, you know, you're raising your kids to play sports and you're at every game, or you're, you know, traveling with this is something my mother did really well. Like she exposed us to a lot. She
Yeah.
was a great like educational mom. You know, she read us a lot of books. She like made education such a huge priority. I mean, I
Same
went
with my
to
mom. I
a
love that.
bazillion Broadway shows.
Yeah.
We were in Europe traveling around watching like the Passion Play and Omer, you know, and she was like, she was just very culturally astute and she gave us a lot of experiences. And yet, that does not take the place of what we're talking about. You can do all the things and you can think you're doing all the things. But if you don't have this attachment piece, this basic, soft, trusting place to fall where you're accepting your kids and really showing them, I've got your back, it doesn't matter how many books you read them
I
or where
agree.
you take them on vacation. So, like, let's not put the cart before the horse.
Right. And how you pack the beach bag with the 8,000
Yes.
sunblocks and activities and snacks
Yes.
and the birthday parties. None of it matters. At the end of the day, what creates a secure human being and a successful adult is being loved unconditionally, being imperfect and willing to take accountability and being there, like have your kids back.
Yes.
Those things go a long way. I hear from people in therapy, oh, my parents, maybe we weren't the most emotionally expressive household. And sometimes people are like, I'm having to learn how to have that language now more as an adult, but I always knew I was loved.
Yeah.
There is no substitute for knowing that intrinsic knowing that I'm
Felt
loved.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
You either feel it or you don't.
Right. And I see so many parents with so much anxiety, and I relate to it, and I became a mom at 27 and I had postpartum anxiety and just tremendous, like I felt like I had to do everything right, to the point of, did I do enough moments of brain stimulation and was she not? I mean, it was so much pressure in the modern parenting. And this is almost 24 years ago.
It's worse now.
It's worse. Yeah. And I think the basics of really being loving and available are
Have
still
stayed the same.
Yeah.
They're timeless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So put most of your energy into the stuff we're talking about today. I just want to tag it on to the end because I think it's important, is to tell your kids like an age appropriate truth about what's going on in the house. I think there's a lot of like secrecy or like parents want to protect their kids from certain things. And I don't think you need to editorialize on things. In fact, I don't think it's you shouldn't do it. But
don't lie.
Don't lie. I think
No.
there is such like a destabilizing force that happens when a kid can feel that something is really wrong and the parent isn't telling
Everything's
like a truth. Yeah. That's not helpful, guys. So like, to the extent you can tell some version of the truth that's going to make sense to your kids and help them maintain continuity is really important.
I agree. I'm glad you brought that up because it's actually psychologically damaging to invalidate the felt sense of reality with pretending everything's hunky-dory when a child can clearly tell. The biggest thing I see, of course, is around divorce, separation, or parents going through a rough period. Don't burden your child with the details of your marriage. Of course, that's not appropriate and that's damaging. But acknowledging like, hey, we're working through like a hard time and there's nothing for you to worry about. I'm the adult and I'm going to handle it and I'm okay. It's got to also be
frame.
Yes, keeping the frame of like, I'm the grown up. I can handle it. I'm fine. And you are free to be a kid. But yes, what you're picking up on, that vibe.
It's real.
Yeah, it's real.
It's here.
Yep. Really important.
So did we cover it today? You know what it is like? Have you seen, like, I wish we could put this clip somewhere. Have you seen that clip of that little kid who comes into the car? He's British and he says, I got my part in the like, what is it? The nativity. Have you seen this?
No.
And the mom goes, oh, what did you get? He goes, I got a classic role. And she's like, you got a classic pot, did you? And he's like, yes.
I love the accent.
And then she says, are you Joseph? And he's like, no. She's like, oh, are you one of the three wise men? And he goes, no. And she's like, well, tell me, what did you get? And he goes, I'm door holder number 3.
I knew
I'll be holding doors. And right away, this mom on cue beautifully goes, oh, fantastic. You're door holder number 3. Are you quite pleased then? And he's like, yes. Holding doors. I'm going to be wearing brown.
Aww.
But like this parent got it so right
Yep.
in these moments where it was like she matched her child's energy. She was enthusiastic. She didn't come in with like her preconceived notions of, what do you mean you're freaking door holder number 3? She was so into her kid. We need to put that somewhere because it's just a micro moment of how to really be a safe place for a kid.
It's beautiful. I think we should link it in the show notes. Do you have it? I want to see it.
I do.
Too.
I'll send it to you.
See, I was parented like that, where my parents were always excited, even if I had the smallest and most inconsequential role. And I feel like I've parented like that so much so that my kids are like, oh my God, Mom, you're like so excited. And we like just walked across the street, but you know what? I'd rather err on that side. And I just want to concede that if you weren't parented that way, that's very easy for me and instinctive, but because I was parented that way. And if you had the kind of parent was like, what? You're the door holder. You're not Jesus, baby Jesus.
Like, who do I need to call?
Right. Like, what the heck happened? And you should have been. And there's a lot of that. So if you didn't have that modeled for you, your instinct might be to be like, wait, who got Joseph? Right.
Yeah. Who did that kid? Not that kid.
Right. But if your kid's like, I'm in the nativity and I am a piece of straw on the floor that the mule is shitting on in the manger, be excited.
It was like literally my daughter's experience. She was like the ass of the dragon in the play. Like she was the ass of the dragon.
But you're excited for her. And that's what parenting is about. Life is hard and cruel and there is so much fucked up shit going on out there. Be a safe place. That's
Be
it.
a safe place.
That's it.
I think we did it today.
All right. It was fun to talk about. I have to say, if I became a mom at 51, I feel like I would be in such a different place to be more patient and more wise, but that's not the way it goes. You learn from your mistakes.
I'm glad I did it when I was, I made mistakes. I think I'm a better mother now.
Me too.
Yeah. I definitely am a better mother now, but I do not have the energy. I mean, parenting 3 kids, like
No. I'm not saying I
don't wish that in this phase of life.
No. I think babies are adorable. I want absolutely nothing to do with it.
I know. Same.
Be cute over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys, for listening. Please let us know what you think. If you have comments, if you disagree with us, we want to hear it all. Insightsfromthecouch.org, info@insightsfromthecouch.org is our email. Insightsfromthecouch.org is our website. Drop us a line. Send in your questions. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks for listening to another episode of Insights from the Couch. We will see you next time.
Bye, guys.